Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Shannon Scott. Megan Roberts is off this evening. Today was the last day of the NWT Legislative Assembly's fall sitting. Discussions about healthcare and housing dominated the session, and they were also sticking points in the capital budget. That budget passed yesterday without any major changes, despite members saying they wouldn't support it as is. Natalie Pressman has more.
Last week, Inuvik MLA Denny Rogers said that regular members need more money for housing and healthcare to support the capital plan. But yesterday, he voted in favor of the budget anyways.
I do not disagree. Housing is one of our main priorities, our top priority, but there are other priorities as well, and there are things in this capital budget that I want to see move forward.
That was the main message of the 11 members who voted in favor of the capital budget. It passed in an 11-5 vote. Shauna Morgan, Kieran Testart, Robert Hawkins, Julian Morse, and George Narasu voted against passing the budget. The majority of those in favor were members in cabinet who voted together. The $339 million plan includes projects across the Northwest Territories, like progressing the Mackenzie Valley Highway, updating the Frank Channel Bridge, and transmission lines in multiple communities. Voting against the budget would have meant delaying all those projects.
We aren't going to advance the issue of needing housing if we can't bring the supplies up on the road, particularly the Mackenzie Valley Highway. We aren't going to be able to connect those houses to power systems. They are going to struggle if the municipal funding, the municipal capital funding that is in here doesn't flow to the municipalities who are responsible for water and sewer systems, who are responsible for the waste management systems. It does all need to fit together.
The members who voted against the budget said they just didn't see their priorities reflected, including healthcare. Many of the issues members are trying to advance are operational, like staffing challenges, which can't be addressed in the capital budget. Outside of budget discussions, members voted to ask for a review of the territory's entire healthcare system. They're asking the Auditor General of Canada to audit the performance of the NWT Health and Social Services Authority. This comes on the heels of this week's damning Auditor General report into Stanton Territorial Hospital project that went 62% over budget. MLAs said the audit would be a tool to help improve healthcare.
To name a few, Mr. Speaker, occupational therapists, speech-language pathologists, countless different nurses, a number of different doctors working in various roles in our system, people who've worked in management, people who have worked, and many people who are working on our front lines. All of these are people whose opinions and perspectives I deeply respect and have listened to with significant concern, because they have come to me in desperation and told me that they are on the verge of leaving or have already left their positions in our healthcare system because of significant issues with how the system is being managed. In particular, the overwhelming message I have heard from practitioners is that they feel their voices are not being heard by decision makers.
If the Auditor General accepts the request, it could take years to complete, and members say there needs to be better staffing and systems in place in the meantime. Natalie Pressman, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Meanwhile, the Northwest Territories Medical Association is calling on the territory to do more to prevent disruptions in healthcare and emergency services. In a news release today, the association says it wrote a letter to the Premier and the Health and Finance Ministers saying staff shortages and systemic challenges in the healthcare system are putting patients at risk. The association says it's alarmed over the Auditor General's findings into the Stanton Territorial Hospital project and says patients are paying the price for the government's failures. Recommendations in the letter include more staffing, strengthening emergency care, reducing administrative barriers to care, and supporting more culturally competent care. Mining companies in the NWT say they face barriers in extracting lithium in the territory. Representatives from several companies shared their concerns with MLAs at a public briefing yesterday. The CEO of Lyft says the process to open a mine takes too long.
We can't be waiting around to bring deposits online because there's a good chance they'll be obsolete.
McDonald's stressed that global competition could knock them out of the lithium race. Lyft says it needs to meet with Indigenous partners before submitting applications, but small communities lack the capacity to handle those applications. The company is urging the government to provide funding to build that capacity. Well, the NWT government is nearly doubling the cost of 911 fees. As of January 1st, the fee will go from $1.70 a month to $3. Anyone with an NWT phone number will be impacted. The news release for this says this is the first fee change since 911 launched in the territory in 2019. The 911 cost recovery fee is intended to recoup the full cost of providing the service so that it remains cost neutral for the government. In the Yukon Legislative Assembly this week, the official opposition hammered the government on what the Yukon Party calls overspending and irresponsible borrowing. The two parties also duked it out over how to best address crime in the territory. Callie McTavish breaks down what happened for us.
To kick off the financial review that dropped at the end of the week, the big surprise was the swing from a forecasted surplus to a deficit. MLA Brad Cathers accused the government of overspending. He also says there's been a 40% increase in personnel spending since the Liberals took office. But the Liberals say the Yukon Party is trying to have it both ways. Premier Raj Pillay says the official opposition is telling the government to spend more on education and healthcare, while also demanding spending cuts. The Yukon Party is also concerned about the amount of borrowing the government is doing. Finance Minister Sandy Silver says a loan agreement with the feds means the Yukon is borrowing at 75 cents on the dollar. And that's allowed the Liberals to take on infrastructure projects without taking on long-term debt. Meanwhile, the parties also sparred over crime in the territory, specifically repeat offenders. The Yukon Party accused the government of inaction. Leader Curry Dixon is pushing for bail reform. That's under the jurisdiction of the federal government. Dixon also wants Ottawa to end credit for time served before sentencing. But a former Crown prosecutor I spoke to this week said credit for time served encourages accused people to stay in jail while they wait for trial. As for the government, it says the solution is repeat offender management programs. Such a program would keep tabs on the 20-odd people who have been identified by the RCMP as consistent criminals in the Yukon. It's an idea that's been around for a long time. The Yukon Party implemented a similar program in 2011 when it was in power. But by all accounts, that program was very successful, so what happened? The government said this week that the Yukon Party canceled it, while the Yukon Party says the Liberals got rid of it. Either way, the government's been in power since 2016, so the real question is what's taken so long to bring it back? Callie McTavish, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Well, still in Whitehorse, where city councillors and new mayor Kirk Cameron were officially sworn in today, a little over 2 weeks since the city's municipal election. Friends, family, and political leaders gathered in council chambers for the ceremony, which included an oath of allegiance and a promise to serve the city without being swayed by private interests. For many new councillors, the experience was described as profound.
No, it's emotional. You don't expect that it will be, but I think for all of us, it's a accumulation of, years, maybe decades of public advocacy and, then taking on this role today. So, yeah, it's exciting. And yeah, I would say it was a little bit more emotional than I expected it to be.
Well, city councillors have been meeting for weeks to prepare for their new roles, and their first sitting is on Monday. Hay River RCMP have laid numerous charges against a man from Fort Simpson, Northwest Territories. They say he was driving a luxury vehicle that had been stolen from Ontario with suspected ties to organized crime. In a news release today, police say they discovered the vehicle was stolen during a traffic stop. During a subsequent search of the vehicle and a hotel room, police say they found more than $2,000 in cash, 248 grams of an unknown white powder, several luxury brand watches, and drug paraphernalia. The investigation continues with help from the Toronto Police Service and Alberta RCMP's Auto Theft Unit. A court date for the man charged has not yet been set. It's been 6 months since the launch of Nunavut's sexual violence prosecution team. One of its first priorities has been to contact victims early on in the court process. The CBC's Samuel Watt looked into how it's going and why it's important.
After 6 months of getting their feet under the desk, this woman-led team says they've made many accomplishments. Communication with other agencies has been key, and reaching out to victims much sooner after an arrest is made.
On some matters, we would be getting to people right away. On some matters, there would be more of a delay of a couple of months. Now the benchmark is 10 days.
Anne Crawford is with Iqaluit Law Chambers. In the past, she's heard numerous stories from victims of those delays.
That's very scary, and many cases were withdrawn because of a lack of a connection with a Crown.
The first person those victims often hear from are Crown Witness coordinators like Jimmy Payton. Her job is to build trust, especially among Inuit. Instead of going straight to questioning, she begins with an introduction of herself.
This is very important because we're the ones who are going to the community and we are talking to them very personal stuff.
The Northwest Territories team has been running for more than 2 years. A strong guilty plea is a goal, but so too is consistency in the team, even as they go through staffing changes.
It's important to be able to only tell your story once, to tell your story to one person and to not have to relive the trauma.
Ultimately, the goal is to bring down cases of sexual violence. That requires a multi-agency approach. Nunavut's team says serving stronger convictions could help.
The message to the community is, we're not going to tolerate this type of behavior, and the victims are going to be heard.
And only time will tell whether they'll happen when their first cases go to trial. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm so happy to have these prosthetic legs. I wear them every day so I can do all the things I love to do. I like to hike, skate, and do gymnastics. Because of your donations, Lamps is able to give me these devices. When you donate, you help kids like me. Thank you.
This is a proposed corridor for multiple pipeline projects.
You're crossing our territory on two ends of your pipeline. Who gave you permission?
Pipelines break of the pipelines would destroy water and everything in it.
They got to come through us first.
This is an immediate evacuation order for all Coastal GasLink employees. I feel like we are at war. It's just all been building up to this point.
Yenta on The Passionate Eye. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Release him.
Why?
Well, I would say it's extremely bad form to arrest your new boss.
This man is actually in my custody.
What did he do?
Well, did you hear that? I'm being charged with,
This ranch isn't going down. Not on my watch.
If the car comes with the deal, I'm in.
Cheers, dragons!
I look forward to fighting you on many a deal.
And we look forward to meeting you.
Dragon's Den. Watch free on CBC Gem.
The question is,
and I'm just going to ask,
I want to ask you, but
why is this such a big deal? What does the science say?
What was their reaction?
What are we talking about here?
Who told you?
So, to be clear, what is the actual story there?
I think we can explain.
There's been some sticker shock in Inuvik recently, and local businesses are demanding answers. Almost 2 weeks ago, the price of beer shot up 28% at the Inuvik liquor store. The prices are set weekly by the NWT Liquor and Cannabis Commission, and as Des Loreen found out, the jump came as a surprise to many people who buy from there.
I found out about a week ago when I went to pick up my order. I said, what the hell is this? I'm not talking pennies here, I'm talking dollars.
The owner of the Mad Trapper pub in Inuvik wants to know why the cost shot up so high without warning.
It caught me so off guard, I had to come back to my establishment and get a hold of my staff and raise all our prices. And that didn't give me any time to warn the customers either.
Earlier this week in the Legislative Assembly, Inuvik Boot Lake MLA Denny Rogers asked why the increase is only in Inuvik. The GNWT says the increase is due to a new contract negotiation with the local operator of the liquor store.
During that negotiation, the commission that they negotiated for themselves went up, and so the prices have gone up. Thank you.
Other business owners with liquor licenses said it would have been nice to be given notice. Des Loreen, CBC News, Inuvik.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has tabled legislation that would, if passed, limit transgender rights in sports, healthcare, and classrooms in that province. Smith says the changes would protect the health and safety of young people in Alberta, but not everyone sees it that way. Aaron Collins explains.
A busy day in Alberta's legislature.
Bill 26.
Bill 27. Bill 29.
Bills tabled that could mean big changes for Alberta's health and education systems. One facilitating the breakup of Alberta's province-wide health board, at the same time making controversial changes to gender-affirming care for youth, restricting access to surgery, hormone treatment, and puberty blockers for minors.
These policies are designed and intended to help preserve the choices children have before they make serious decisions about their bodies.
Well, the new rules drafted after consulting with some members of the trans community.
These all in the right spirit and the right direction to ensure that kids are being protected.
But that opinion far from universal.
We know that gender-affirming care is necessary. It is life-saving care.
Well, the new bills will also impact how gender and sexuality are taught in schools. Parents will now have to opt their kids into sex ed instead of opting out. An unnecessary change, say some who teach youth about sexuality.
There's lots and lots and lots of parents who are really, really happy that sexual health education takes place in schools, and they don't need an extra layer of approval.
The new laws would also force schools to inform parents when kids ask to change their pronouns and add limits on transgender athletes competing in sport. The suite of laws upsetting the opposition.
The most heinous, most rigorous anti-trans legislation, anti-sex ed legislation that we've seen anywhere in the country.
The flurry of legislation comes just days before the Premier faces a leadership review. Some political watchers say it's directed squarely at the right flank of the United Conservative Party.
Danielle Smith has to placate these folks that are well organized and very motivated to try to get their agenda front and center.
There is a real sense out there that the Premier is sweating this vote quite a bit. And, you know, if history is any indicator, she's got some reason to be concerned. Alberta's Conservatives, well, they eat their own. I mean, Danielle Smith only has the job of Premier because her party kicked out her predecessor, Jason Kenney. So this weekend, what do we have? 6,000 United Conservative Party members congregating at the AGM. And the question for Danielle Smith, how many of them are showing up to support her and how many are showing up for her head?
That was the CBC's Aaron Collins reporting from Calgary. Well, in Nunavut, the city of Iqaluit is rolling out a program to help Inuit families with the high cost of food. It's called the Inuit Child First Initiative. Families will receive $500 a month for every child aged 18 and under. The money is meant to go towards purchasing food. Families with children aged 4 and under can also get $250 a month to help cover the cost of diapers. The money comes from the federal government. You can register online or in person at City Hall. The program will run until March of next year. Realtors often earn a hefty commission when helping someone buy a home. And as prices have soared, so have their fees. But as Nisha Patel explains, now some home buyers are getting a discount by using cash-back realtors.
It's an excellent home.
When Mehrdad Kayeri bought his dream house in Toronto, he scored nearly $35,000 back.
I figured by using a cash-back realtor, this would really help us with the mortgage.
His realtor earned 2.5% commission and returned a chunk of that to him, a perk for buyers who hunt for houses themselves online.
With so many tools nowadays, online tools like House Sigma and MLS, my wife and I did the bulk of the heavy lifting.
All realtors earn commission when they represent someone who buys a home. Cash-back realtors give some of that money back to the buyer. The amount of the rebate depends on the percentage negotiated and the price of the house. But with average selling prices in cities like Toronto and Vancouver topping $1 million, it can add up to a lot of cash.
Commissions are very rich, and I think it's a good thing if these things are negotiated.
Here's the master bedroom.
Many traditional realtors insist their compensation is fair and argue that smaller fees could lead to worse service.
Well, it varies across markets.
This real estate expert says doing your due diligence is key.
Make sure you kick the tires. I want to check, see how many transactions they've taken care of in the past year. If they have a lot of experience, I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
For cashback realtors, the model may be a way to attract clients at a time when home sales have slowed. Alex Kvitnitsky gives up as much as 50% of his commission.
It's a nice bonus to have when you get a rebate that you can allocate towards whatever thing that you want to spend your money on.
He says these days home buyers are often far along in the process by the time they come to him.
Buyers are now very, very savvy. They want to be a part of the process, and so they do their own research. They look for their own properties.
As the industry changes, his fees are changing too. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
After a CBC Marketplace investigation into Canada's accessibility practices, the airline promised to do better serving travelers with disabilities. Now, months later, Travis Danraj put Air Canada to the test to see if anything had changed.
Marketplace flew Air Canada from Toronto to Fredericton with Brock Richardson.
I have periventricular leukomalacia, which is basically a brain injury.
Richardson saw our investigation last year that highlighted a series of concerning stories about accessible air travel. Alessia DiVirgilio had a lift hit her on the head. Our hidden cameras also capturing this moment.
To say the word terrifying just doesn't fully capture how you feel.
Air Canada pledged to improve staff training, boarding procedures, and make necessary equipment available. But Marketplace found some promises weren't being kept. In Fredericton, no lift is available to assist in moving Richardson, and despite Air Canada's new policy, he didn't board the plane first.
There is some vulnerability that goes on when you're being transferred, and I didn't sign up for that to be amongst the public.
We were requested by authorities to board a number of other customers before.
Then there's this moment.
I'm not comfortable with that at all.
A staffer tells him his support person needs to get off the plane during a transfer.
If they're not assisting or anything like this, then we have to ask them to deboard the aircraft.
After some back and forth, she's allowed to stay.
We'll need to clarify the policy. I don't have that information right now.
We also documented an Air Canada manager appearing to record a seat transfer without Richardson's consent.
It's not Air Canada policy to do that. What we do is we do take photos occasionally of mobility aids that are being stowed to ensure that there's no damage once that's being stowed in the cargo hold.
Air Canada now says they only took pictures of Richardson's empty wheelchair and tell him they regret his overall experience. They've also reached out to him for feedback and to offer a $1,000 coupon as a goodwill gesture. They've also sent a lift to the Fredericton International Airport. Travis Danraj, CBC News, Toronto.
An art studio in Ottawa, Ontario is brimming with color, creativity, and friendship. Being artists is a space where people with developmental disabilities are exploring their creativity and selling their work to the public. Sandra Abma dropped in to see.
There is a rainbow of opportunities where artists draw and sketch and meticulously apply paint to their canvases, where there are no rules, no judgment, and no barriers to creativity.
I am an artist inside and out. And so I love doing what I do best, and that's my artwork.
Go, Debbie, need a needle threader for the needle threader.
Oh, this is bonkers.
Being Studio nurtures the talents of Debbie Radcliffe and her friends, artists who have developmental disabilities and are finding joy and confidence in colors. Like Frances Lobe, who's using a needle to fashion a felt sculpture.
I feel like anything you can do is possible.
when you do art.
There you go.
Megan Christopher is one of the studio's facilitators who works with the artists. She has one word for the range of creativity she sees at these classes.
Magic, honestly. It's crazy to see what everybody comes up with every day.
Executive Director Walter Howell is pulling out works that will be sold online and in an upcoming open house. He says he sees the impact these art classes are making firsthand.
That's transformational. It provides them with the landscape to just be themselves and show the world, what they have to offer.
That's true for Doug Garrow, who is sketching a tree. He says he can't wait for his Tuesday classes.
It's like a big dream for me to be here and happy. Makes me feel like I'm a real star, and I am. Like, when I'm here on Tuesdays, I get real good feedback from everyone else, and it's like a good feeling.
Sandra Abma, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/north. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Shannon Scott. Have a great night and an even better weekend. We'll see you again on Monday.
I know that I've been reckless, but it won't happen again. I love my daughter so much. I just need a chance to prove myself. Hello?
What you do?
I'm a thief.
Which insects are serially monogamous?
I'm just curious.
Can love help us live longer?
I feel alive!
Does heartbreak make music better?
I love this music.
Could AI compose the next masterpiece of our time?
Robot composers conducting robot music.
Do you really need to wait 30 minutes after eating before swimming? And why is something as big as time kept in something as small as a watch?
Whoa, that's heavy.
When you get curious, you get CBC.
They're making more money than they have ever made in the history of the music business.
We have generation after generation of us not seeing a fair piece of the pie.
How do we keep the money from Black music in Black people's hands?
You're going to be introduced to a new world. Stand back.
I think my dislike is warranted.
What was Amy calling it? The beef wars?
You don't tell me anything. You don't share your feelings, open up about your past.
It's not that simple, Amy.
They reported a shipment of cocaine stolen 2 weeks ago.
We all have our vices, Detective.
Oh, you find that surprising?
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.